Hey, mama. So people are often shocked when I tell them that I consistently publish two solo episodes weekly and that I do it all by myself. I don't have an editor or anything like that. It is me, myself, and I. And when I actually first started my podcast in October 2022, I started out publishing three solo episodes weekly. Creating podcast content is simple for me because I have developed a podcast workflow that really allows me to streamline this entire production process. And so in today's episode, I'm taking you behind the scenes of how I consistently publish two solo episodes weekly as a busy mama in business. All right, let's jump into today's episode. Hey, mama. Welcome to Marketing Without Socials for Moms, the go-to podcast for moms in business who want to stop relying on social media to build their business and build it in a way that fits their current season of life. I'm your host, Andrea Singletary, a wife, mama of two, and visibility strategist for moms. Each week, I'm giving you the inside scoop on how to increase your visibility, leads, and sales through podcasting, email marketing, and collaborations. Ready to truly make social media optional in your business? Grab your chai tea latte and let's dive into today's episode. We're often told that consistency matters in business, especially when it comes to creating marketing and sales content. Now, this is also true for podcast content when you are podcasting for your business. And the reason why is that consistency is what builds trust. You can potentially deter new listeners, aka potential buyers, if they see that you don't have a consistent posting schedule with your podcast. People don't want to invest in a podcast that they can't guarantee will continue to publish new content each week. It's just like, you come across a show on Netflix that seems really good only to discover it got canceled after 2 seasons. Most likely you aren't going to invest in watching it because the story will be cut short. You're not going to really be able to see how the whole thing unfolds because the show got canceled. And so consistency matters, and having a podcast workflow will help you be consistent with publishing new episodes. Like, you have to keep showing up for your people. Okay, so as I mentioned in the intro, my podcast workflow is what keeps me consistent with publishing multiple solo episodes weekly. Now, the same workflow that I'm sharing today is what I'm going to be breaking down during the Podcast to Clients mini mind. So the mini mind, it has each day we're focusing on a different aspect of podcasting and podcast strategy. And part of that strategy is being consistent, is showing up consistently on your podcast. And so I'm going to be breaking down my process, but even more than that, I'm going to be supporting you with developing your own workflow or simplifying your current workflow. If you find yourself that you're struggling to be consistent with your podcast or feeling like you're all over the place when it comes to producing your podcast, I got you. You join us for the mini mind and we will get all of that streamlined for you so that way you can consistently show up on your podcast. But I'm going to be breaking down right now my podcast workflow. This is the same workflow that I have pretty much been using since I launched my podcast back in 2022. I have tweaked and added some things since then, but for the most part, this is the same workflow. So I use Trello for my project management tool, and this really helps me stay organized and ensures I complete each step in my podcast workflow. I've tried Asana and a few of the other ones, but Trello is where it's at for me. It's what works best for how my brain works and all of that. And so in my Trello board, I have a checklist set up where I can check off each step as I complete it. And so the first step in my workflow is deciding on my podcast episode topics for the upcoming month. So I generally plan my content between the 15th and the 25th of the month. So for instance, for March content, I've already mapped that out. I started that around the 15th of February. And got all of that mapped out. And so now I'm actually recording those episodes and everything. And I'll get to batch recording in a little bit. But like I said, I map everything out between the 15th and the 25th of the month. This includes doing keyword research for each episode. And I use keysearch.co. I talked about that in a previous episode, like my whole keyword research process. And so I will link that episode in the show notes. But I do that, I finalize the episode titles, and then I outline the episodes. And so once this is complete, I'm able to go ahead and start batch recording those episodes. And one thing I want to note here is that outlining your episodes is so important. It ensures that you hit all of the points you need to hit in each episode, including selling in your episodes. Now, I audited one of my podcast strategy clients' podcasts back in December. And one thing I had noticed was that she wasn't consistently selling in her podcast episodes. And when she did, it was sort of kind of thrown in at the last minute and it didn't fully connect to the episode topic. So she had shared with me that she noticed that when she moved away from outlining her episodes, that it took her much longer to convert listeners into her offers. And so after, I audited her podcast and gave her that feedback, she went back to outlining her episodes and she started this in January and she's already seen a shift. She just shared with me that this month that someone binged her podcast and reached out to her in her DMs saying how she is seeing results just from implementing the strategies from her podcast. And then she inquired about working with her. Now, this is only after 1 month of making these changes. And so this is why outlining your episodes is so important because it really ensures that you are hitting all those points and that you are selling in your content. If you want to convert your listeners into clients, you have to sell to them. You have to tell them how you can support them, but you have to make sure that episode topic connects to the offer that you're selling. And so when you join Podcast to Clients Mini-Mind, you will get access to my podcast recording outline template. And this template includes prompts to ensure you are selling in every episode. It is such a good outline template. It's something that I use. It's something that I share with my clients. And it really just helps you to hit those main points. But again, making sure you're actively selling in your podcast content. So for recording my episodes up until about like November 2024, I would set up my little makeshift recording studio in my closet. So I use like a old diaper wipes box and then my husband's shoe boxes. So like I'd have my laptop propped up and then another box would hold my microphone and everything. And I would record in my closet. But in November, when the kids' Christmas gifts arrived, we had to keep their presents in the closet because my kids are super nosy. They would have opened the presents and there would be no surprise for Christmas. And so we kept their gifts stored in our closet, which meant that I wasn't able to record in there. I mean, I could have, but I did not feel like pulling out all those boxes every single time I needed to record. So I switched to recording on my phone and I've just stuck with that. This has honestly made this process even easier for me, like with batching my episodes and everything, just pulling out my phone and sitting in the middle of my bed and recording. That's what I'm doing right now and everything. But it's made it simpler in the sense that I'm not having to do the whole setup, but also I feel like I'm in a more relaxed state. And so I've even just noticed a shift in my content in general, like how I'm showing up in my podcast episodes and stuff. Like it's just a different vibe and everything. And so I've decided to stick with this. Like the audio still sounds really good. And it just makes recording easier for me. Like just pull out my phone, record. So that's how I batch my episodes. And then after that is the post-production process. So one thing I don't do is I don't batch edit. And that's just me. Like I don't like batch editing, but I do edit the episodes at least a few days before they go live. So usually either Saturday or Sunday, depending which of those days I'm working, I will batch produce the episodes for the upcoming week and get those scheduled out. So usually by Monday at the latest, the episodes for the week are edited, scheduled, all of that. But as far as my post-production process, so for each episode, I write show notes that are housed on my website. I create 2 to 3 Pinterest pins, and I have a couple of graphics that are included in the show notes. So like there's a header graphic, and then there's like I think it's called like a blog preview graphic. And then I have templates for each of these. So even for the show notes, I have a template for it. And so it's literally plug and play. I just go in and change out like the name of the episode. And for the show notes, it's just plugging in those missing pieces. So like the episode description, I include main points for the episodes and then resources that I mentioned in the episode. It's just literally filling in those pieces. And then there's also a section for any related podcast episodes or blog posts. Again, just filling in those missing pieces. So that is like the general overview for the post-production, and then like a deeper dive into it. So like with editing, I edit my episodes in Audacity. It's free. And I also use Auphonic to level out the audio. So to make sure that the audio is at the same level throughout the episode. For editing, I mainly cut out any parts in which like I, really mess up on what I'm saying, and then softening the breaths because your girl be breathing hard. But that is it for the editing. I don't do anything extra special or anything like that. For the show notes, again, after I'm done editing, I upload the episode to Castmagic. It's this AI tool which gives me the transcript for the episode, and it generates a episode description, provides bullet points like of the main points covered in the episode, pulls out quotes that I could share on Threads. It also like spits out like a newsletter, like all different types of content created specifically from the audio I input. And so it really gives me a good starting point. I tweak it to sound more like me, because even though it's using like the audio that I recorded, it still can kind of sound a little like computery, robotic or whatever. So I clean it up to sound more like me. But again, I'm not starting from scratch. It cuts down that process for me where I have like a good starting point or like a skeleton to work with. And then I flesh it out a little bit more. And then once the show notes are written, I upload and schedule the episode in Captivate, which is my podcast hosting platform. I schedule the show notes on my website. I schedule my Pinterest pins. I create my pretty link for the episode. And then I will also pull like some quotes from Castmagic and create and schedule posts for Threads, as well as like write my weekly emails that promotes the episodes for that week. Again, keeping it super simple. And because I'm not like doing everything from scratch and I go in this order and I have these templates and different things like that, it simplifies this process altogether. Now, one thing I need to start doing is timing myself on this for like how long it takes. But for each episode, like I said, I do 2 episodes a week. I want to say it takes me roughly about an hour. Again, I have to time it because usually when I'm doing it, there are lots of interruptions from my little ones, which is totally fine. But in general, it's about like an hour altogether for the entire process. But I am going to time it, and I will be sure to share that in a future episode. But even with publishing 2 episodes weekly, I'm able to knock out both of the episodes in one day and get everything scheduled ahead of time. So I generally will do this on the weekend, like I said, either Saturday or Sunday. Sometimes it spills over into Monday, just depending on what we have going on that weekend. But I'm able to get both episodes produced and scheduled and all of that just like in one day, but like not saying the full day. Like it usually takes me probably total time combined about an hour. But anyways, like the reason why this works for me is that I've created these templates and these shortcuts, and I really try to keep the overall process simple. Like, I used to over edit my episodes. I don't do that anymore. Like I said, I mostly like soften the breath so it doesn't sound like I'm, gasping for air. and, and then if I mess up on a part, I will just cut that part out. And one of the things that I do when I'm recording is that if I mess up on a part, I pause and then I just re-record that sentence. And that makes the editing process so much easier. I'm able to just delete the part I messed up on and keep it moving. So this process really does not have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complicated. And so if you're feeling like your current podcast workflow is all over the place, or it takes you way too long to produce a single episode, you need to join us inside the Podcast to Clients mini mind. In 1 week, I will support you in simplifying your podcast workflow and creating a podcast strategy that's going to drive leads and sales. This is perfect for you if you want to start signing clients from your podcast, or you're just tired of not being consistent with your podcast. Like, your podcast can legit be a pivotal part of your marketing and sales strategy. And let me show you how inside of the Podcast to Clients mini mind. Like, I want to support you, and I'm super excited about this. Like, you're going to get my support, but you're also going to get to connect with other women who are podcasting and doing all of that. Like, it's going to be phenomenal. And so if you want to join us, head on over to mamaturnedmompreneur.com/mini mind to grab your spot now. All right, Mama, I'll catch you in the next episode. Hey, Mama. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to hang with me. I would love to keep the conversation going. So head to mamaturnedmompreneur.com/marketing without socials to join my email community. I share even more tips and strategies for building a business that doesn't rely on social media and one that fits your current season of life, as well as more behind the scenes of mom and business life. All right, Mama, that's it for today, but I'll catch up with you again next week.